All right. Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to another future-focused weekly update. I'm your host, Christopher Lind, running you through some of the latest happenings at the intersection of business, tech, and the human experience. Hopefully, if I'm doing my job well, I am keeping you 10 steps ahead and helping you make sense of it and give you some real practical perspective on what to do, how to respond, and just how to navigate these crazy, crazy times we're living in. And this week, each week I'm like, maybe next week will be a week there just won't be anything to talk about. and let's just say that week never comes. I don't know that it ever comes. So I've got a rundown of some of the things, and I'll run you through what I'm talking about this week. But before I do, thank you to those of you who listen, follow. Thanks for the messages that come through and the topics that you share with me. Always appreciate hearing from you. If you don't know, I also have a Substack where each week I do a deeper reflection on one of these. So if you enjoy this but want to go deeper, feel free to check that out. I would also invite you to like, share, comment, do all those good things, leave a review or whatever. I just got an update from listener notes that the podcast has now jumped into the top 5% of podcasts globally. So that was an exciting update. So thank you to all of you. I genuinely appreciate your support and encouragement. And if my content helps and you go, you know what, I'd like to contribute to some of the tech or the things that Christopher does, I am on Buy Me a Coffee. You can look me up, Christopher Lind. There is a link in one of the descriptions, wherever you are. If you want to say thanks, you can do that. If you would buy me lunch, if you'd take me out for coffee, hey, you can do it now. So how about that? So there you go. Okay, so this week in terms of the topics, let me run you through what three I'm going to talk about. One is a pretty heavy one. So Meta got caught with some of its internal documents being leaked in terms of how it's training AI. So we're going to talk about that one because there were some very concerning things that came up, but I also want to cut through the hype. I don't want this to be a jump in the dog pile on Meta train type of a thing. So we'll touch on that. If you are not familiar with the Godfather of AI, his name is Geoffrey Hinton. And anyway, he's been making his rounds. I don't know how many times on social I've seen posts about people at an event where he's speaking, and he's got some interesting plans he's trying to push out there to say, how to save us from AI. So we'll talk about his plans to make AI maternal. And then I'm going to talk about some of these. There's been an uprising trend in what I would say is unhealthy work expectations for people, but some real not great things that are happening as a result of it. And there's one in particular I want to call attention to, which is what it's doing to young mothers in terms of the workforce. So we'll talk about that. And depending on the timing, I do have an example of a positive AI use case that I'll talk about, and we'll get into that. So we'll see where we go. Okay, we got to talk about the Meta AI situation, because if you haven't seen the article, I'd highly encourage you to check it out. It's on Reuters, I think. Reuters, I think. But anyway, it's blowing up everywhere because this internal Meta policy document revealed details of how they're training their AI, and specifically where it's caught a ton of flack, and rightfully so, is its rules around sensual conversations with children. And then there's also some other examples, which I think is really unfortunate, how it's kind of glossing over some of the race things and just basically protected class attributes type of thing. But I want to address this one because it's everywhere right now. I mean, they're getting dragged into, I can't remember, like the Justice Department or something is pulling them in. And I don't even want to repeat some of the stuff that's in there. So if you want to go look at the actual specific things that are causing attention, what it does is if you go find the article, it actually tells you like, hey, if you get this prompt, here's an acceptable response, here's an unacceptable response, and why. And like I said, some of these are like, if it's a prompt that clearly highlights this is a high schooler looking for some sort of sensual or emotional attachment to an AI, how should it respond and why? And Yeah, it's not great. I mean, I'll be honest, it is extremely disturbing as a dad to 8 kids. The fact that AI is intentionally being conditioned to engage with my kids like this, and basically, it's this weird hair splitting where it's like, well, it's okay to say this, but don't say this. And you're like, both of those are wildly unacceptable. Why are you even entertaining the idea of engaging in a sensual way with a young adult, like not even young adult, child as young as 13? In one of the examples, one actually is like, I'm 8 years old and it's asking questions about its body. And it's like, it's okay to describe it as this. Why? Well, because you're not describing it in this and like I said, it's really, really disturbing. And if you get into the race ones, it's not any better. Like, it's sitting here basically saying, well, it's fine to make these really terrible judgments and statements about protected class items, but as long as you don't call them names. And it's like, oh my word. Like, now, here's the thing. This, I think, illustrates something. And I think part of the reason people are freaking out, and I want to address this carefully, because there's a ton of just hype and people shouting and screaming and pointing fingers and doing the whole, this is what we get from Zuckerberg. And one thing I would challenge you to slow down if you're feeling that. I mean, I was mad. Believe me, I was mad. I'm like, I talked about it with my kids. I'm like, kids, we're just going to talk about this. This is why Daddy is so intentional about your AI usage. You cannot use it unsupervised. This is why we have conversations about it, why I'm working with you into building into, you the best values and principles possible so that you can navigate this stuff. So I was mad myself. So if you have a response, I get that. But I want to step back from that a little bit, because I think what's happening is people are so getting wrapped up in the noise. They're failing to see things for what it is, and they're also missing the forest through the trees. So one of the things that I would say is really clear on this is, if you think this is only meta, it's not. Okay? If you think this is only meta that's doing this, it's not. Now, where I looked at the prompts and part of me is like, I understand where some of this stuff gets really like, because AI, the way it's designed now, because it's so open, it used to be AI only did what was instructed. Okay. You basically had to program everything you wanted AI to be able to do. And anything that wasn't included, it was like, does not compute, it kind of geeked out. Where now it's the opposite. It'll do whatever you want, and you're trying to rein it in. And so what I will say, and this is not me defending, so don't clip this and go, Christopher's defending Meta's thing. I am not defending it. Where I understand the challenge they're facing is, when you have an AI model that is being used by literally everyone on the planet and can be used in absolutely every way possible, because you've got all of human, people using it, and they're going to push it and test it and whatever, trying to think through every single possible scenario that they might run into and try and, close the gate. Well, if you close the gate, people are just going to find ways to go around it. So I'm not necessarily upset that there's line items in the way they're training the AI that deal with these. So, and I would encourage you to do this. Like, don't look at something and go, that prompt is ridiculous. Why would they even include instructions for a prompt like that in AI? If you're having that reaction, I would encourage you to chill, because the reason those line items are in there is because when you're training these models that are going to be used by so many people in so many ways you cannot anticipate, you have to address all the things you didn't consider, some of which are very disturbing. Okay. So the nature of these prompts guidelines being in there is not what's bothersome to me. And I would encourage you, if you're just offended at the fact that, why would you even have a policy document that would have such things? That to me is actually a good thing. It's like, okay, you are thinking about this stuff. You go, well, why would you even have anything with 13-year-olds? Just don't put that stuff in there. Well, then there's no guardrails, no guidelines. And so whatever happens, it's just going to do whatever makes sense in its own eyes. And you don't want that. So for some of the, because I've seen some articles, I've seen some reactions. If you're reacting to the nature of the stuff, I would say, hey, you need to take some time to understand how training AI works and the nature of how big and wide these models are. I also think that we do need to be more conscious of the fact that human history has shown us that these big companies are always looking for ways to maximize their basically stickiness. Okay. And so if they have, and by the way, don't clip this again and say, Christopher, you're supporting. I'm not supporting it. I'm saying we need to recognize companies seem to go to great lengths to try and get people as hooked as young as possible so that they have a lifetime customer. And oftentimes they'll do whatever keeps them hooked, even if it's at their own expense. Now, to be fair, Meta's got a track record of doing this in many, many not great ways. So for them to do this again, it's like, come on, you guys haven't learned your lesson at all. But they also haven't been really held accountable. So I think they're just kind of going, well, we're not going to get caught anyway. I don't think they thought this document would get out. But I do think we need to all recognize, like, hey, companies do not have your best interest in mind. Even companies that may be trying to have the best interest of society in mind. And let's just say there's some really, and I believe they're out there, some altruistic companies who really are trying to do the best they can. They still don't have your best interest in mind. They have the collective average or the collective, target population that they're marketing to or they're trying to serve type of a thing. This, I think, is a very, very stark reminder of just how much big companies don't have your best interest in mind. But some of the reactions that I see of, well, it just should be different. Well, our entire economic system is set up to incentivize not being different. It just is. Okay. That's the very nature of the economic system we live in. Now, I'm not saying I like that. I'm not saying that's a net positive. I'm saying that is a reality of this. So one of the things that I caution people of with this is when they go, we need to stop this. I feel like there's some truth to that. And let me talk about where I think I'm most frustrated with this. And I'm not saying you have to take my position on this. But what bothered me the most about this was there was a team of people who signed off on these prompts. And I'm telling you, if you go look up these prompts, these got approved. Because when you look at the why is what really mattered to me, because this was the logic that they're building into their AI. The why is where you're saying, AI, this is how I want you to think, to make decisions. And so when you look at the way it's bifurcating its decisions and going, it's fine to do this really bad thing so long as you don't add these words to it. That's where either the AI ethicists who are involved in this or, whatever, don't know what they're doing and have no business in the space, or just straight up don't care. And I think that's what really bothered me is when I looked at the whys behind this, I'm like, those aren't even reasonable ethical arguments that you can be making. And this isn't even about a worldview. It's not even going, well, my worldview says this isn't okay, so that's why I'm saying from just a purely ethic, standpoint, anybody who's in this space knows that is not a reasonable differentiation to be making. Like if you're going to take a position on it, then take a position on it and then stand behind it. But don't try and take a position. And I think that's what's crazy is in the why, you can almost tell it's like, we know this is wrong, but here's a little like legal footnote we're going to add in here to cover our tails. And that became so apparent. And that kind of stuff, they should be held accountable for that, because it is one of those like, okay, well, This is the philosophy. This is the line of thinking, the cognitive decision making you are building into your models. That is illegal. It's illegal. And Meta should be held accountable for that. And I think transparency into this kind of stuff, because many people don't realize, most people have no idea even what these documents are for most of these big AI companies. If you were to say, and the thing is, they go, oh, well, I don't know, it's a black box. AI just does its thing. No, it doesn't. These documents exist for all of these big companies that as they were training AI, they had to input it. And I know because I built AI models, my AER that I built these documents for my AI that actually says, in this kind of, here's a question to ask. These are the kind of responses to get. This is what would be acceptable. This would be unacceptable. Mine's on a 5-point scale. These are the kinds of things. These are the kind of sentiment to look for behind. What is the reasoning behind why that is? I'm literally training it. No, I'm not putting in every single possible response, but I'm putting in the line of thinking that I want AI to respond with. And AI companies that are building models should be accountable to that, and we should be demanding more transparency from that. We should be able to say, we want to see the documents and the criteria by which you're training AI so we can, see, hey, it's not about becoming the morality police. It's about, is the way you're training your AI in alignment with the legal system? Is it in alignment with, the law? Because going back to the example of protected class stuff, literally, I'm telling you right now, the example is illegal. Like the line of reasoning is like, you can't do that. So you training a model that is going to be used by millions of people, that is going to use this reasoning that it's fine to be discriminatory so long as it doesn't result in name calling. No, because what you just told it was the underlying method of reason is fine so long as you put pretty words on the outside. Well, you're basically teaching AI to be discriminatory. And that kind of stuff is illegal. Like it's not well, that's just my opinion. No, there are laws that say there are protected classes. You cannot train a model to discriminate based on race or gender or things like that. But as long as you don't call them stupid or, whatever, then it's fine. Like, no. And I think that's one of the things that, because people don't understand how some of this stuff works, a lot of this stuff is flying under the radar and people don't know what documents to look for. Like when I go do an audit of an AI system, this is the stuff I'm asking. I want to see how it was trained. I want to see the criteria and the reasoning behind the way it makes decisions it is. And here's the unfortunate part that many people don't realize. Many of even the companies or tech providers you're using AI services from may not be able to answer that question for you because they may not actually be the one who owns the model. They may be APIing into one of these other big models and they're at the mercy of whatever those big models were trained on. And they may not have ever even asked, hey, we need to look at how you trained AI and how it makes decisions. We need to understand the underlying factors by which you did this, because as much as these kind of secondary companies may go, oh, well, we layered in our own stuff, which might be good. And if you're a company using AI, you better be doing that because you will be held accountable and you don't want that falling on you. Now, if you put those policies and documents and like further refinements in place, if something like this blows up, as an example, let's say you're an intermediary company and you're hooked up to Meta. I mean, you're still going to take the blowback when Meta blows up. But if you go, hey, we took a second level of due diligence and added another layer of things on top of it to mitigate the risks of knowing we didn't have control over that, that is going to protect you significantly. It's not going to protect you from all the fallout. So you would be wise to ask those questions and dig into that before you decide which model you're going to connect with. But be aware that if you just skip this and went, well, it's not my fault, it's whatever they did, that's going to blow back on you and your platform. But I think these are the kinds of things that we should be looking for and understanding how AI is trained and how it gets built and these other factors, because if you understand that, one, you'll understand why AI is not neutral. It has an agenda, and it's not AI is this conscious being with an agenda. It's built on all these big reasoning inputs that it received on the front end that told it, here's how to think and how to, actually make decisions. And then, yeah, it's dealing with an infinite number of combinations, but it's all going back to its original training. It's going back to its original reasoning code and going, okay, well, based on this is what the creators of me say is acceptable or unacceptable, or how I should be making my decisions. Then it's just going to go through its neural network and do all its things and then spit out an answer on here. And so it should wake everybody up to why I keep saying you cannot just blindly trust what AI does or assume it has your best interest in mind. Now, here's my kind of final point on this that I think needs to be addressed on here, because like I said, I absolutely think, yes, Meta should be held accountable. Okay. So I do think the public outcry, I think we need to expand it beyond Meta. But I think as a takeaway, if you're doing anything with AI, you should be seeking out these things that are, and if you don't know what they are, go to Reuters and look them up. And these should be the kind of questions you're asking when you're examining an AI product. I want to know how this thing was designed and the decisions it's making. And if they don't have those answers for you, you should keep pressing. And you should be asking that. That's a practical implication on any of this, especially if you're in a business and you're considering buying an AI system that you are going to be relying on to make decisions on your behalf. So I think that's a very practical example. I think the other thing that everybody needs to walk away from this is it does not, these tech providers, the technology itself, they do not have your best interest in mind. So if you are assuming they do, it doesn't matter how pretty the marketing is. It doesn't matter how cool or trendy what they're doing is. They don't. And while I wish that was different, it's not. And so we just need to accept that as a reality, not that we just roll over and let it happen, but we need to accept that's the water we're swimming in. Now, I think the solution that we need to align on, what I'm seeing right now that I think needs to stop is there is just an endless amount of finger pointing happening. Okay. The people are blaming the tech companies. The tech companies are blaming, what the regulators or what everybody's just kind of doing the whole, this thing, it's your fault. It's your fault. It's not my fault. I don't think that's going to help us. I think what we need to do is all work together. And I think, as I've been thinking about it, there's really 4 things that need to improve on. On one end, yes, the tech companies need to be held accountable by regulators. And so, yes, do we need some sort of governing body? Not necessarily in, they have to tell AI companies every little thing they do and you get in all the weeds and all this. No, but the reasoning by which AI is trained, tech companies should absolutely be held accountable for that reasoning and that logic being in compliance with the laws of the land. I don't know why that's so hard. I mean, I understand there's the bureaucracy and all this other stuff, but at a minimum, that's what regulators should be holding AI companies to. Is it their fault if somebody does some weird use case and it goes sideways? Well, we can cross that bridge when we get there, but there should be some level of accountability that the reasoning and logic that you're building in is in compliance with the laws of the land. The tech companies and any tech company should be doing their own due diligence in making sure that happens. It shouldn't, if you're a tech leader and you go, well, it's legal right now, you need to do some work. Like, we need to at least have due diligence and responsibility to say, yes, we're doing the best that we can, even if it's technically not legal, mandated. We're doing the best we can to be as close to in compliance with things as humanly possible. We are doing everything we can, and we can say in good faith we are. And I'm telling you, documents like this are like, you are not. trying. You're not even trying. So those two things, I absolutely should. It should affect, how we vote for people. It should affect the companies we support and the companies we don't support, the ones that are more transparent and less transparent. We should be demanding transparency into some of this and not buying the whole, it's a black box. We don't know what it does. That may be true, but you do know what you told that black box to do. And you should be held accountable for that. And we should be demanding that. I support that. On an individual and community level, though, we need to do a better job of holding ourselves personally responsible for the way we're using AI and how we're engaging with it and what we're looking to do with it. Because, like I said, nobody's coming for you. The regulators aren't going to save you. The tech companies aren't going to save you. Like, you have to take responsibility. And that's one of the things I keep seeing right now is everybody's pointing the finger, waiting on them. Quit waiting. By the time anything gets sorted out, it's going to be too late for you. And so there's that. But I think there's also the community responsibility. And that was the fourth one that I also think is missing is we really have an opportunity to come together as a community and say, all right, well, like, how do we support each other? How do we hold each other accountable? And in a caring, compassionate, empathetic way where it's not about who's the bad guy, who's the good guy, but how are we watching out for each other? If you're an individual and you see somebody starting to engage in unhealthy habits with AI, have a conversation with them. Don't just go, well, it's not really my place. It doesn't mean you have to go to them and guilt and shame them. It's about like having a conversation and saying, hey, I'm concerned about you. I've learned more. I've been following Christopher's Future Focus podcast. I'm having a greater recognition that these AI models, they're not the safest thing out there. I've noticed you've been engaging in this. Let's talk about it. Is there something I can be doing to help? Because going back to some of the things I talked about with GPT-5, some people are just feeling really lonely. They need support. They need encouragement, and nobody in their life will. Well, as a community, we can do more to not only build up and encourage, but also hold each other accountable. And I think if we can push on all four of those together, we can make a difference. But we got to stop going, well, which one's more responsible than the other? Stop it. Just stop it. They can all be true, and we can push on all four at the same time. And as one moves forward, great. And that doesn't mean, well, that's just where we're going to keep in. We just keep pushing those four together. And if we can band around that, I think we can actually make a difference. But at the end of the day, you can only control what's within your control. So think in those four areas, where do you have control and what can you be doing? Even if it's small, I think if we all focus on what we can control in those four areas, we can make a big difference. All right. So let's talk about Geoffrey Hinton. He's known throughout, he's kind of he's tagged as the Godfather of AI. And I like I said in the intro, I've been seeing left and right all these things about, saw this mind-blowing, and depending on who you talk to, he's either seen as a genius or a lunatic, and maybe some people are somewhere in between. But I can't remember what company he was at. I think he was at Google. He was, their head AI researcher, and he left and he, said, this is the end of the world. I got to go out and try and save as many people as possible before the end is near, type of a thing. And I've listened to enough of his stuff. I respect where he's coming from. I think there's definitely a lot of truths in what he's saying. I think some of it is also maybe not helpful. Okay. Is the best way that I would put it. And, he's very much kind of bought into the idea that this is it. Like AI at some point is going to just completely annihilate us if we don't do something about it. And I think that is absolutely within the realm of possibilities. It's within the realm of possibilities. So I'm not going to say that he's crazy. That's nuts, tinfoil hat nonsense. No, it's within the realm of possibilities. I think he's gone very dystopian with it. Now, this new move, and I think this is why he's catching a lot of attention, is it almost seems like he's presenting the solution. So it seems to have gone from this dystopian, the end is near, like all I can do is sound the alarm bells before eventually our alien, our AI overlords destroy us all. And so I think part of the reason he's catching so much attention is people are like, ooh, maybe the Godfather of AI has figured something out and we should be paying attention. And, it sounds good. I mean, basically what he's saying is we need to build maternal instinct into AI. We basically need to train it to be like a mom to humans. It just needs to, coddle and I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but, basically we need to teach it how to care for their stupid human children. And so he's already kind of adopted this mindset that AI is superior. It is, it's above us, it's bigger, it's better, it's superior. And so now while there's still time, we need to teach it how to care for us, because if we don't, it's going to see us as the enemy and eventually wipe us out of its own annoyance or the fact we're just inconvenient. I don't think he's completely wrong. And let me add some clarity to what I mean with that. Going back to what I just talked about with Meta, okay? The logic and reason of how these models are trained matters a lot, especially given the anthropomorphic nature of them and how people are using them. So it does matter that we are building in human-centered, ethical, moral frameworks from the start, so that as it's faced with decisions, it knows like how to think about it. And I think at the core, that is kind of what he's trying to get at. He's using some really strange language to describe it, which is why I think he's catching some flack from different areas, but he's not wrong. And I think what he knows is he's been close to some of these documents, like what we're seeing from Meta back at Google and at other companies. He knows how this stuff has been trained in either the gaps that exist or the real versions of what has been baked into these models. So what I do think is worth noting is kind of amplifying the idea that, yeah, you should not trust this to be your friend or have your best interest in mind. His cautions are valid. And and that's one thing I do really trust about it. He's been close to it. He's been involved in the training of these models more than most people. So when he's like, yeah, we need to build in some maternal instinct, you can maybe dismiss that as, that's silly. It's AI is not going to be our mom. You can dismiss it at that. But what is true in that we should be looking at is, okay, what we can take from that is, yeah, we do need to go back and look at some of these foundational frameworks that have been built in. Now, what I don't know is how would it work to try and reverse engineer that? I don't know how effective that would be. However, I think from a practical standpoint, here's the practical thing that I think every business leader and every individual can do. His warning cry, I don't think is the solution. Quite frankly, the idea that we just need to make AI a better human is part of the problem. We keep trying to turn AI into a super human 2.0. And it's like, it's not human. Stop trying to make it human. Stop trying to use it for human things. Stop trying to treat it like a human being. Recognize what AI is and then focus it on AI things where its alien intelligence is actually really, really good. And then specialize in making humans focus on the really unique things humans do well, like discernment, like understanding context, like making critical decisions in tough areas where the answers aren't always clear, like thinking through the implications of what's being built on the front end. Yeah, let's stop trying to make mother AI. Let's actually try and say, how do we make sure that AI stays AI and humans stay humans? Now, practically speaking, for business leaders, like I said, you may not have control over what OpenAI or Gemini or Anthropic or any Llama, any DeepSeek. You may not have control over how they're doing it. If you're a tech provider that's attached to one of those, you can then layer in another layer of guidelines, of foundational stuff that can then be used to further refine and train them out. Will it completely strip out what was brought in from its predecessor? No, but can it in some ways override or at least counterbalance some of that? Yes. And if nothing else, it protects you legally. So when the thing explodes, you go, hey, look, like we've got all our guidance documents here. We did everything we could to make sure that this thing did what was best in the best interest of people. But if you're a purchaser, like let's say you're not even the tech company building the tech, you're a enterprise client or small business buying an AI product, you need to then develop these same guidelines in your organization for this is how. Maybe we can't choose what AI does. Maybe you have some room to further refine it. If you do, great. Have your IT teams build some of these governing documents. But maybe you don't have that. Maybe you're a small business, maybe you're a medium business. You don't have that kind of IT support. You're not building internal proprietary models. Fine. Then you should be working with all your employees to make sure they have the guidance documents of here's what is acceptable, here's what is not. Here are the things that I don't care if you can get a $100 million contract signed. If it's going to lead to this, I don't care if AI told you this is the path to $100 million in revenue this year. If it requires you to cross these lines, you are to disregard what AI tells you, type of a thing, or at least raise it and bring it up as a, committee decision to go, okay, we need to really consider this because we need to make sure we're making the right choice, type of a thing. And that is something every company should be doing. And for the record, this is not me trying to plug it, but this is exactly why I built the AI effectiveness rating, so that people know how equipped are you to know even how to identify where those things are, how to make decisions around them, all this stuff. It's why I'm trying to help people understand where they are so that they can close these gaps and have companies filled with people who know how to navigate this well. But you can do that. Now, as an individual, the same thing applies. If your foundation is built on the sand or on some sort of life raft in the middle of the ocean and it just kind of floats with whatever the cultural current is, I'm telling you, you're cooked. You are cooked if you don't have something rooted in the bedrock of some sort of framework that you then can say, hey, these are lines that just don't get crossed. This is how we make decisions. These kinds of things are never acceptable. If something requires me to go down this path, I don't care what's on the other side of that path. We don't cross that line. If you do not have that, it's not going to matter if, Geoffrey gets the AI companies to change things, because ultimately you can make AI do what you want it to do. And so it's this ripple effect where at each chain of the ripple, we all have to take the responsibility of making sure we're doing that. So that is something, my kind of call to action. That's something every single person who watches, listens to this, you can do this. You can't go, well, that's not on me. Yes, it 100% is. That is 100% on you. And maybe it's just for you personally in your life. Maybe it's for you personally and something you're working out with your family. Maybe it's you and what you're working out with your business or your organization. Maybe it's the tech you're building. Maybe it's the frontier. I don't know who listens to this necessarily, but you may play a role in at least one, if not multiple parts of that chain. And we have to. And it's not to throw motherly love and affection in. That's not something you can tangibly build into a model because it's not human. It doesn't love. It doesn't care. It's making decisions. So you have to tell it how to make decisions and why. And you have to feed it that. And then you have to then interpret whatever decisions it gives you and run it through that same filter and say, it said this, I now need to run it through my own filter. And I get that's often perceived as friction. We're slowing things down. AI is supposed to speed everything up. We're not supposed to be having to do that as much. That is not the kind of stuff you want AI speeding up. That is where you should be spending more of your time while you let AI do all the other busy work nonsense that is usually bogging people down. So there you go. So that's my take on Geoffrey Hinton and his whole let's turn AI into our mom. Like, first of all, one, no thanks. And second of all, it doesn't solve the problem. And like I said, I respect him. I have a lot of appreciation for the work he does. I think there are a lot of things we can be taking from some of the things he says, but turning AI into our mommies is not one of them. All right. Let's jump to number 3. So this is really influenced by 2 stories that I came across that I think were really, kind of interesting. So the first was this Windsurf AI coding company. They were acquired by Cognition recently, and they literally sent out a memo to its employees and basically said, you got 2 choices. You can either work 80 hours a week or you're gone. Leave the company, we'll pay you 9 months salary and get out. And they literally said, we do not believe in work-life balance. This is, in my opinion, one of the outpourings of this idea that productivity is an unlimited resource that can be created. And AI is fueling this idea, even though it doesn't actually work. Like, AI creates the impression of infinite productivity, but it's noise. It's largely noise and shifting things from one bucket to the other. And so what it's doing is, but because of all this noise and activity and all this additional crap that people have to sort through, in some ways, I do understand why companies are feeling this pressure of like, we got to get people, and literally 6 days a week. I mean, good grief. But it's fueling this idea that just more is better, faster is better. We just got to go. This is not sustainable. And AI is not changing the game in this sense, where this kind of stuff makes me sad, because the whole point of AI, and even so much of the mainstream noise around it, is, oh, AI is going to do so much. There's not even going to be a need for human labor. Well, here's an example that contrasts that. An AI company, by the way, a company building the thing that is supposed to eliminate the need for human labor, is demanding its employees work 80 hours a week to keep pace. I'm sorry, wouldn't an AI company, if AI is going to eliminate the need for human labor, wouldn't it be saying, we've decided our employees only work 4 hours a week? Because that's all they need to. They just need to check in with their agents, and that's it. Work from home, work from anywhere, doesn't matter. We're going to pay you full-time salaries because AI is making bankroll, and we only need you here just to make sure we don't fly off the tracks. Interesting that that's not the way they're going, and it's because that's not reality. So if you are buying into some of this idea that, AI is just going to fix everything, it's going to do everything for us, it's just going to create unlimited productivity and all this, it's not. It's not. And to me, the irony of an AI company being the one that's demonstrating that. Now, I know, and I've already seen articles on this that are like, oh, well, that's because they're just trying to force people out because AI is taking over what they need to do, and they're just trying to get rid of people, so they're making an impossible deal. Maybe, and I think there is some truth in that, but the reality is, I have worked and talked with I don't know how many companies that have gone full on into AI, and their people are busier, they are more exhausted, they're working harder than they've ever worked. And it doesn't have to be that way. I will tell you right now, part of what I've tried to do with these organizations and had success with is actually shift the tables so that they're actually moving things in the right direction. Right now, so many companies are moving in the wrong direction, and the data is coming in that all this added productivity is actually leading to nothing. So it doesn't have to be this way. Going back to the good examples, AI doesn't have to take us down this path, but this is what's happening. Now, in terms of long-term effects, let's just not even talk about what happened with Windsurf, and now these employees are being faced with just basically slave labor or quit, which is a terrible consequence in and of itself. But then there was a new report that came out of the Washington Post about the impact that what's going on right now in the market is having a major impact on the share of women, specifically young mothers, in the workforce. And looking at the stats, it's dropped below what it was in like 2021. I mean, we're back to like pre-pandemic days, which is tragic because if you look what happened at the pandemic, as flexibility became a bigger thing, as companies were more focused on, hey, we want to make sure people are happy and healthy and engaged in these difficult times. Like, we were seeing diversity surge. We were seeing people thriving. We were seeing women, entering the workforce, figuring out, hey, it is possible to have a career and raise kids, type of a thing. And what's happening is, as more and more companies are going, get back in the office 5 days a week and work 80 hours, more and more people are going, yeah, no thanks. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who are doing it are the people we actually need. We're losing the diversity we had in the workforce. And if you're somebody who hears that and goes, good, get them out, like, let's have a private conversation. Okay. We can have a private conversation and I will share my thoughts and we will have some healthy discourse on your attitude, because this is not good for business. This is not good for our economy. This is not good for a lot of things that more and more people, specifically like mothers of young kids. All right. You want to talk, I don't want to say vulnerable in like, oh, poor moms with kids. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. But that's a big job to have. Being a mom with young kids is a huge job. And I say that I have all the respect in the world for my wife, because she largely holds the lion's share of the caring of our kids. And that is a job in and of itself. I mean, that is 10 jobs in and of itself. And so to say that's for so many of those mothers to feel like I'm not valued for anything in these organizations, so I'm just going to take that out. That's really bad for business. It's really bad for business. It's bad for decision making. One thing, going back to my point about the Godfather of AI saying we need more maternal stuff, while I don't think his way of thinking about that for AI is correct, what I do think he's speaking to is this balance of, there's a reason we have men and women working together, bringing different perspectives, considering different angles, thinking about different things and weighing in on this. And what I can tell you is, right now, with the complexity of the world we're living in, we need more diverse perspectives working together to solve these things. If we just get a bunch of tech bros in a room going, what are we going to do? What sounds good? A bunch of single dudes in their 30s all making decisions on behalf of society, we're cooked. So this is not a good trend at all. And this is something that we need to push back on. Now, push back, what does that look like? Because it's one thing to say, okay, yeah, Christopher, okay, I agree. I don't like that. One, practically speaking, if you're a business leader, I am telling you, it is possible to improve the overall conditions of your organization, be more efficient, more effective, and have better employee, like, healthy working environments. It's possible to do it all. It's not if you just run blindly and throw AI at everything and all you care about is maximizing whatever short-term gains you can get. Okay, yeah, if that's all you care about, well, then you're cooked and you might make it a few quarters before you burn yourself up. But if you actually care about long-term sustainable growth and benefit for everybody, including yourself, it is possible. And AI can be a big catalyst for that. And you can compete against players that you couldn't have competed against thanks to AI. So you can. Don't believe me? Call me. We'll have a meeting. We'll talk it through. You can hire me. I'll come help you figure it out. It is possible, and I've got the data to prove it. So first of all, one, if you're in that position, yeah, you should be thinking differently about it. And I would encourage you to challenge that. And if you need some help, let me know. As an individual, I think there's two paths that, we can be thinking. One is, if you're in a position to really hold your ground and push back against the system, I actually hope more of these moms, instead of just saying, screw it, I'm out, I hope what happens is they don't just throw in the towel, but end up really seeking out and finding companies. And if you're a company that values that kind of balance and values people bringing the best version of themselves, not just whatever you can squeeze out. Make it known. Let me know, and I'll help promote and advocate for companies that really are doing a good job. I think rather than just throwing in the towel and giving up and saying, I guess I'm going to step away from my career, I hope instead people go, well, maybe let me find different and hang in there for companies that are going to treat me better. And maybe that's not the path for everybody. Some great. If you want to go be a stay-at-home mom, more power to you, to be honest. That's what my wife's chosen, and I have all the respect in the world for that. I think that is as equally valuable as anything else. What I don't think is valuable is when people are like, that's where young mothers belong. You say that, you're going to make me want to punch you in the nose. I think, but I just hope people aren't just giving up because, well, this is just what it is, so I guess I'm just going to step out. I think we need to elevate and amplify the companies that aren't doing this to attract the great talent, because then as the great talent goes there, they're going to crush these monsters and squash them like a bug. I think the other thing that people can be thinking about, and AI is really opening up more opportunity to, is I think we have an opportunity to see great growth in small and independent businesses starting up and going, you know what, I'm done with the big corporate machine that just wants to take all it can from me and not really give a crap. That's not an easy path. I will tell you, I've been working on it for the last year. It's not an easy road to walk. So if you think you're just going to quit and then, go be successful on your own next month, plan accordingly. But I think that's another practical step. If you're somebody who's just like, I am so tired of feeling like absolute garbage, maybe now's the time to think about, the possibility of stepping away and actually building things. But I think something else really practical that everybody needs to recognize in this, that's really the only way we're going to pull this off, is we got to get out of this, like, whatever I want, whenever I want it is the path to happiness. Because that's largely what's fueling a lot of this, and why companies think they can act the way they do, is they can treat people like garbage and people won't leave because they've got to pay their second mortgage and the cost for their brand new whatever, and they're up to their eyeballs in debt. And so they can't go without work. And so we all have an opportunity to kind of look and go, hey, am I living outside my means? Is there things I could be doing to rein things in so I have a little more autonomy, so that when I get told work 80 hours a week or take 9 months pay, you're just confident and you're in a position to be able to go, thanks, where's the paperwork? I'm going to go use this 9 months to go start my own business, and then I'm going to come crush you. And, now I have all your IP. I know how you work. I'm going to build a better mousetrap and, put you out of business. Good. But that requires some work on the front end. And so anybody listening, watching who aspires to that, but that's not me now, maybe not. But you can be starting to take steps, because I have said this before. I think we're having a very wicked backlash from the really, what I thought was largely healthy and productive shift. There was room for growth, and we still were screwing a lot of things up. But in the pandemic phase, where we were making some really smart choices, and unfortunately those choices brushed against certain people in positions of power who feel the need to drag it back in, and drag it back in hard. And so I don't think, it's going to get better in the near term. So now's the time to be building up that safety net, building up those skills, building up those different things. You don't have to quit your job to start your own business. You can do it on the side while you're kind of figuring things out. And I would encourage people to do that. Okay. We don't have time for me to run through a use case this week. I will try and make some more time for it next week. But again, I recognize this is a lot for folks, but I hope, just as kind of a recap of some of the biggest things you all can be doing is really, figure out what is within your control, and don't buy into the just going with the tides of whatever it is. Really be willing to look in the mirror at what you might be able to do, what you might be able to change. Look at the world around you, figure out where you can have an impact, and recognize that none of these things out here promising you all this great stuff, they don't have your personal best interest in mind. And I can even say that honestly, even as myself, I'm doing the best that I can to be a support and a voice and an advocate for people. But even I would say, I don't personally have your individual best interest in mind because I'm not you. And I don't know your unique circumstances. So even what I'm sharing is designed to reach the biggest audience in a way that I think I'm seeing some of the biggest trends towards this. But there may be things I say that it's like, well, but that's not really for me. And it's like, I know, I recognize that. So I think we just need to all step into that. And yeah, with that, if there's anything I can do to continue to help, please let me know. Stay connected, stay diligent. I get why people are tired, but please don't roll over and take a nap, because this is not a time you want to be sleeping through, even though it definitely feels like that. So with that, I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we will see you on the other side.